Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namassami. Dear friends, tonight I'm going to read you short bits out of several different suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Middle Length Discourses of the Buddha. All of these suttas are in one way or another dealing with Vedana and the way in which one can go into painful, suffering, and difficult direction with Vedanas, are the way in which, with wisdom, we don't have to get into that kind of trouble. So I'm just going to go straight ahead and read along here. I'm starting with Majjhima 18, the Madhupindaka Sutta. What you feel, you perceive. What you perceive, you think about. What you think about, you proliferate. What you proliferate is the source from which judgments driven by proliferation beset a person. This occurs with respect to sights known by the eye in the past, future, and present. And this same passage is repeated regarding each one of the 6 sense bases. So all of these suttas have one thing in common that I'm not reading over and over again, which is how, based on the 6 sense bases of eye, ear, nose, taste, touch, and mind, that there is the internal base, the corresponding external contact, the corresponding type of consciousness, which you could describe as the faculty that shines a light on the corresponding object. So when we speak of consciousness as the knowing faculty, you don't want to confuse yourself and confuse consciousness or vijnana with perception, sanya, which brings in an aspect of judgment, qualifying the object, whether it's good or bad, likable or dislikable, and details about what that object is. The sanya is recognizing, but the vijnana is just the first initial awareness turning toward that object. But it's not the same thing as awareness or attention, which is the mind turning towards an object. Vijnana is just simply putting a light on the object. In a way, volition, the sankhara or the volitional formations, is also part of the knowing faculty. When you form a volition towards an object, you have decided what you want to do about it. And in many cases, you might have an object before you and be somewhat unclear about what it is or what the meaning, what the significance of that object is. But when there's that a click of a decision, and you know what to do, that's almost simultaneously with thinking that you really understand the meaning of that object. So, for example, if you recognize that something belongs to the group of phenomenon that comes under the first noble truth of dukkha, then you know what to do about it is those things are to be fully understood. If you know that it comes under the second noble truth of the cause of dukkha, you know that this is something that should be abandoned. So knowing the real meaning or the significance of some phenomenon that you experience is connected with attention, perception, and volitional formations. But this, what you call consciousness, this knowing faculty, is just simply what is arising in the moment, together with the internal and external base, and putting a light on it. Okay, so in this first reading, the Bhikkhu Mahakachana is giving a little sequence of causation from contact to proliferation, showing how depending on contact, feelings arise, depending on feelings, perceptions, depending on perceptions, thinking, depending on thinking, conceptual proliferation, which subsequently triggers papancha sanya sankha, a swarm of proliferating notions across all the 6 bases. And later in the sutta, you will see the practical point that's given in the sutta. If nothing is delighted in, approved, or appropriated, then these tendencies will end and the proliferation will not happen. So, but without that knowledge. So, okay, now here's Majjhima 38, which is the Maha Tanha Sankhya Sutta. Being so full of favoring and opposing, when they experience any kind of feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, they approve, welcome, and keep clinging to it. This gives rise to relishing. Relishing is called nandi in the Pali language. Relishing feelings is grasping. That's upadana, is grasping. Grasping is a requirement for continued existence. That's bhava. Continued existence is a requirement for rebirth. Rebirth is a requirement for old age and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress to come to be. That's how this entire mass of suffering originates. So this sutta is putting the proliferation of reactions in the context of dependent origination, and in particular, giving this background condition of being full of favoring and opposing. I think that would be kind of a wrong view. If you have the idea that these are my friends, those are my enemies, these things are good for me, those things are bad for me. If we say, I don't know what the local team is. I grew up in Washington, and our local team was they were called the Redskins at the time. I think they've changed now to something that's less offensive. And my other team was the Senators, and so I'm for my team, and I'm opposed to the other team. That whole I'm for my country, I'm against the other, or I could care less about the other country. I'm for people of my ethnic background. All of those things, those views, those evil views, create the conditions for this relishing to arise. So this is a slightly like a variation on the standard format of dependent origination. Now we come to Majjhima 137, the Salayatana Vibhanga Sutta, which is the sutta that we spoke about yesterday evening. Seeing a sight with the eye, one is preoccupied with a sight that's a basis for happiness or sadness or equanimity. And this word for being preoccupied is called upavicharati. When somebody is practicing jhana meditation, it's said in the formula that there is vitaka and vichara, which is in that context translated as applied thought and sustained thought. So vitaka means that the awareness connects to the object or the theme of contemplation. And then the vichara means that the mind remains or is sustained in its attention to this object. And the vichara is sometimes described as not just like perfectly still, like turning on a light bulb, but sort of like exploring the dimensions of the object or theme of meditation. So that vichara has a little bit of that some movement, but it stays connected to the object and the theme. And then this upavicharati is got the prefix upa, and that has got a description as the mind's habitual roaming among the feeling bases, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Then this sutta then further classifies 18 manopavichara. That's mano, that's mind, upavichara. The roaming, the mental roaming, and it presents them, and then it further gives the skillful or less skillful ways of dealing with feelings in terms of the household-based feelings, the renunciate-based feelings of joy, sorrow, and equanimity. And so the practice of renunciation, or the way this is giving a practical way of working with the Vedanas to work your way out of the tendency to be preoccupied or obsessed by the objects that trigger certain feelings. The way to work your way out of being trapped in the downward cycle of dependent origination. And that procedure in the Sutta 137 is involving replacing the householder way of responding to a feeling with a renunciate response to the feeling. And then furthermore, beyond that, substituting joy and grief with moving from joy and grief to equanimity. So you come to renunciate equanimity. And then even beyond that, moving on to what's called not fashioning, or attamayata, which is the state of a fully enlightened arhat. And that's the final evolution of this progressive, it's a kind of a gradual training of the feelings. So that's 137. And now here we have 140. That's the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, the Discourse on the Elements. Seeing a sight with the eye, one is preoccupied with a sight. That's a basis for happiness or sadness or equanimity. So it is exactly the same statement in this sutta as it was in the Salayatana Vibhanga Sutta. But in 140, the context is different. Instead, in this section, it starts again with an exposition about the six sense basis and about the contact and the consciousness and arising from the six sense basis, which I think is quite meaningful. I've reflected about this sutta for a long time. It's a very lovable, profound sutta. And the main meditation theme in that sutta is contemplating the elements. But before contemplating the elements, the Buddha is setting up as a framework to be aware of the six senses and how phenomena arises through the six senses. In this case, the context is, this sutta, we could spend a week or a month studying this sutta, and you could probably spend several years just contemplating this one sutta. There are six elements. There are the six contact bases. These mental roamings, the upavichara, and then the four determinations. One should not neglect wisdom. One should protect the truth. One should generate a relinquishment, and one should practice for peace. Those are the four determinations in this sutta. So the contemplation of the material elements of materiality, you're dismantling your attachment to those suttas by reflecting on them in terms, this is not me, not mine, and not myself. And you just keep reflecting internally and externally on each one of the elements, earth, air, water, fire, so forth. You reflect internally and externally, not me, not mine, not myself. And one can somewhat see that the water in the ocean is not myself. But when I weep, to see that the tears are not myself, or to see that the blood which is pumping through the heart is also not myself. So that's the practice in a very natural and intuitive way, opening and letting one arrive very easily at that insight that the material body or the material elements are not myself. And then based on that, one goes beyond all fabrications. From the practical perspective, if you see the elements as not self, then observe the arising and cessation of feelings. Then stabilize your pure equanimity without appropriating or identifying with any of these states, even the refined states of meditation. And then give up, cease, and abandon any fabrication whatsoever towards any state of existence or non-existence. And then this is the fruition of, it's really the describing of what it's like to be an arahant, to accomplish this. And that state is the fruition when one has cut off papancha, cut off the proliferation at its root, by completely cutting off the delusion about the self. Okay, so that's 140. And yet there's more. Here's 148. That's Chachaka. That's the 6 sets of 6. And it's talking about the 6 kinds of feelings. Internally and externally. So you have each one of the 6 as a sense bases, internal and external. When you experience a pleasant feeling, if you approve, welcome, and keep clinging to it, the underlying tendency to greed underlies that. When you experience a painful feeling, if you sorrow, wail, and lament, beating your breast and falling into confusion, the underlying tendency to repulsion underlies that. When you experience a neutral feeling, if you don't truly understand that feeling's origin, disappearance, gratification, drawback, and escape, the underlying tendency to ignorance underlines that. So this is a different, slightly different, very methodical analysis of the same ground, especially that was covered in 137. 137 is making this progression about householder feelings and renunciate feelings. This one is more abstract, but it's more pure. And in particular, when you're practicing the renunciate feelings within meditation, you can experience the joy and bliss associated with meditation. And actually, there's joyful feelings that are associated with renunciation, with generosity, and with keeping the precepts of sila. All of those things support the arising of joy. And then with the joy, one can move on to the profound, pleasant feelings connected to meditation. But you don't cling to any of it. And especially, you need to protect yourself from the danger of clinging to the joyful and blissful feelings that can arise in meditation. If somebody is so lucky that they're able to easily go into a deep meditation and experience strong, blissful feelings, then that talent or that gift of the bliss of samadhi really needs to be balanced with wisdom. Otherwise, you would have the danger. I know I've met some meditators or some people who tried meditation, and for some reason, it's a feature of beginner's luck. Like the first time that they tried meditation, they fell into deep samadhi with the waves of blissful sensation, but they had not yet stabilized themselves in the Dhamma. And then they came out of that experience, and many months and years later, they still have the longing for samadhi and the sorrow because they once had this great experience and they're not able to reproduce that great experience that they had the first time because now they're corrupted by craving. So they're craving samadhi, and the craving is creating a disturbance that means that they don't get it, and they didn't have enough grounding in the insight to be able to see that even the states of meditation are impermanent, conditioned, and not to be clung to. And if you have that, then you can practice samadhi all the way up to coming to the neutral feeling in the fourth jhana, which is, and even the you could say in a way it's the culmination. It's the most profound, most stable, most peaceful, most clear state where there's a perfection of mindfulness arising because of the neutrality of, and so equanimity and mindfulness are really strong. So it's, but even here more than ever, you need to bring insight into the picture to see the impermanence of that equanimous state in samadhi. So this advice here about understanding the origin, disappearance, gratification, drawback, and escape of within the equanimous, peaceful meditation. That's where that caution is the most powerful and will help you the most, because you've got that perfect equanimity and perfect mindfulness. This is your chance. This is your great opportunity to see arising and cessation, to see those things with perfect clarity, and that's how you have a chance to turn towards enlightenment by having that insight from within samadhi. Some teachers say upon emerging from samadhi. Some teachers say within samadhi. But if you're just having a neutral feeling because you're going through your day, and on an average day you only get a smaller number of pleasant or unpleasant experiences, and you get a larger number of experiences that are kind of neutral. Well, it's also good to bring wisdom and insight to those experiences. But I think that the powerful one is the neutrality, the neutral feeling of samadhi is the real opportunity. This sutta, I'm giving you the negative examples of the examples of failure, and these suttas also give then the success story is when you experience a neutral feeling and you do understand the origin, disappearance, gratification, drawback, and escape. And the underlying tendency to ignorance does not underlie that. So that's the Chachaka Sutta. Then 149 is the Maha Salayatanika Sutta. This is on the sixth sense basis. Mendicants, when you don't truly know and see the eye, sights, eye consciousness, eye contact, what is felt as pleasant, painful, or neutral that arises dependent on eye contact, you are aroused by these things. So this truly knowing and seeing is the Pali word pasang yata bhutang, or sometimes you see that yata bhuta jnana dasana is so not seeing, ajanam, not knowing, apasam, not seeing, yata bhutam, the way things are, the way they become. This is one of the stages in the Nidana sequence, the spiral path towards awakening. And it's a wonderful theme in itself to develop what it really is to know and see things or reality as it actually is. And the objects here that are suggested, the eye, sights, eye consciousness, eye contact, and then going beyond that, what is felt as pleasant, painful, or neutral that arises dependent on eye contact. These are part of a contemplation that you will find in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta under the Four Noble Truths, under the arising of dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. So when you don't truly see them, then that's where dukkha arises and where it settles down. And when you do truly see them, that's where dukkha doesn't arise and doesn't settle down. So that's a very beautiful passage. And the sutta gives the opposites, the one who doesn't truly see and the one who does truly see. So if you truly see, if you're trying to develop mindfulness-like practice to accurately develop the perception of the phenomena that's arising within you, you have the perception that you can perceive, you know what the eye is, you know what visible sights are. If you can't perceive it directly, at least like intuitively, the eye consciousness, when that arises, the contact, that's the first moment of conscious awareness where those other three things are coming together. So you can have some kind of perception as that. And then if you can practice developing the perception to very accurately, quickly, and with detail, perceive the feelings that arise as a result of each contact. And if you've got that sharp mindfulness, you're protected from becoming obsessed as a result of the feelings. But if you don't have the perception and you can't see the feeling when it arises, or when the feeling arises, you know there's a feeling, but you don't have a clue where it came from. You just got this feeling seemed like it came out of nowhere because you've not developed the mindfulness to see how it's working inside of you. Then you will become aroused. This word aroused is called sarajati. And I looked up that word. It means you would become infatuated, you become enamored, you become attracted, you become lusting by the eye. You become attracted to sights, you become attracted to eye consciousness, you become attracted to eye contact, and you get attracted to whatever is felt as painful, pleasant, painful, or neutral. So you become like the attraction is coming in on the whole package of experience. And I think this can give you some clue about how challenging and how difficult it is for an ordinary person to avoid becoming aroused and attracted and infatuated when feelings arise, because the stages of this with the triple conjunction and the contact arising just in the moment right before feeling, that's a very subtle and fast moment. It's difficult to see it, or even if you may not be able to see it directly, at least like at the first instant that the feeling arises, in a way you can sort of like look back and you say, oh yes, I can see there was this contact. It's like a perception a moment in time is not something that has a zero duration, like the edge of a piece of paper. And I think this is more like a Western idea of neuropsychology, that a moment has a certain duration. It's like there's a minimum amount of time that one perceives as a moment, and it does probably correspond to some concept in the Abhidhamma about the I think there's like 18 mind moments that are involved in what one is able to experience. So when you got that experience of the feeling, it's opened up to awareness, like the light of consciousness has caused that experience of that phenomena to be visible. But already it's a bit of a package. You can see there's different stages in it, so you can look back and you can practice with contact. Practice with open the eyes and see and say, okay, what happens there with the contact with the eyes? Touch something with your hand and say, okay, what happens with that contact? What happens when this cup is warm? So I got the contact with the heat. Okay, what happens? What happens right there? If you've got a sound, if you got sound arose, what happened? Just at the moment when the sound arose. So this is how to sharpen up and develop. It's called developing the perceptions. And when your ability to perceive something depends that you've practiced perceiving that. So if you practice being able to perceive the context through the senses, the more you practice, the more you become capable to perceive them. The more that you're capable to perceive them, the more you have a chance to see these cascades of different phenomena that happens within you that has the possibility to lead to proliferation and entanglement, or it also has the possibility to stop right there and just let the seeing be just the seeing without proliferating into anything else. Okay, here's another one. This is the last one that I'm going to read you. This is 152. It's the Indriya Bhavana on the faculties. When a mendicant sees a sight with their eyes, in them arises what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what is both agreeable and disagreeable. They understand what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what's both agreeable and disagreeable have arisen in me. That's conditioned, crude, and dependently originated. But this is peaceful and sublime, namely equanimity. Then the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes stabilized. So this is giving a very high description of a refined care at the sense doors, guarding the sense doors, recognizing the danger in this agreeable, disagreeable that's arising. This agreeable is called manapa. And it has a lot to do with this we were talking before, what you're favoring and disfavoring, what you like and dislike. That's the whole danger, is that we're perpetually in a world that we like this, we don't like that. But it's possible to attain the state of being one who's fully developed. This is called the cultivation of the senses. And in this sutta, it starts with an ascetic who's questioning, who's saying, well, in my religion, we practice the cultivation of the senses because in meditation, we don't see, hear, touch, taste, or smell anything. And because we've cut off the senses. And the Buddha says, no, that's not cultivation of the senses. If that was the cultivation of the senses, then you would say somebody who was deaf, mute, blind, and paralyzed, who had no sensations from a medical reason, would be enlightened. But then they give this description. So one who can see quickly as soon as that reaction. And this is like, it's the purpose that nature gives us. We experience the things that we experience as being pleasant are the very same things that would help us to survive and be able to live another day back when we were primitive, the first humans living on the plains of Africa, hunting and foraging for food, and always being on the edge of survival or on the edge of losing our life. And so then through evolution, nature gave us this quality. So like this tea is this is pleasant. It's likable. It's healthy. It's a medicinal tea. It will help to help my throat to be soothed. It's got a little bit of a sweet taste, and something is sweet, it has calories. Some of those ancient people in not on the plains, but in Africa, there's tribes, primitive people, and the main source of nutrition is honey. They got so much exercise that they could eat massive amounts of honey, and they never get fat. And the honey gives them the calories to be able to survive, to get through the day, to be able to have enough energy to maybe catch an animal or a fish or something, so they'd be able to balance their diet. So the sweet is lovable because if we were a primitive human, it was good for us. And so our bodies, evolved to like those things. And then something that's rotten is disgusting. And no, we don't like that because it's poison, it will kill us. Or something that's disgusting bad behavior. If somebody breaks the rules and breaks the values of our family or our society, and if they steal something, then it's like the same part of the brain that's processing a rotten, poisonous food is processing that rotten, poisonous behavior. And we get a very similar emotion. We say, we feel disgusted when people act away because it's a danger to our survival. If somebody is stealing, lying, cheating, or stealing our spouse or something like that. It's those things that used to be life and death. And so we evolved to have these strong reactions, and those reactions then evolved into the three kinds of into what the Buddha recognized and acknowledged as the three kinds of feeling. And he acknowledged clearly the power that the three kinds of feelings have in driving so much else along the path of causation, either leading towards the round of old age, sickness, and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. So that whole path is in a very powerful way triggered by feeling. So the Buddha gives a very central and special position to feeling, even more prominent coverage of feeling than other kinds of mental faculties, like awareness or attention or perception. These other things are all covered, but feeling is really taught and really emphasized. So when in the scene is just the scene, when we're able to feel the tone as just a tone, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, when we can clearly notice perception when it arises and the beginnings of thought when they arise, if we do not delight, endorse, or appropriate those kind of thoughts or those kind of objects, we would be able to just give the label, say, you could say roaming, upavichara is roaming, the way the mind is roaming. So if you wanted to use that labeling method in your meditation, just say roaming, the mind is roaming. And then you can very quickly return to clear knowing of the phenomenon that you have within you. I shall now see if there's any questions. Welcoming Janaki, Leo, Manal, Sudha, Gregory, Ryan, Pankaj Kumar, Rhythmic Freedom, Bhumika, and Sagars. There's one question here. I heard that the Pali word for ignorance and the Pali word for unskillfulness are both the same word. Is that true? No. Ignorance is generally avidya. So vidya is wisdom or knowing. There's another word that's very close to that, which is moha, which is usually translated as delusion. So either avidya or moha would be translated as ignorance, and then akusala would be translated as unskillfulness. So kusala is the word for skill. Akusala is the opposite, unskillful. In the same family with unskillfulness, there's what's called papa, which is sometimes translated as bad or evil. So evil, unskillful states. Here's Manal. Can there be perception without developing feeling, or does perception further feeling? I had a chance to encounter the aurora borealis in November, and while it was an agreeable sight, I wonder if these experiences ultimately further feeling. My idea is that a feeling can come before perception. Feeling is more intuitive, and it's almost impossible to prevent feeling arising from that moment of contact. In the Pen and Origination, it says, contact conditions feeling. And feeling by itself is karmically neutral. Feeling by itself is not a problem. Well, you could say that feeling is the fruit or the result of the previous karmas. So all of the previous conditions that happen, including like what kind of personality you have, can culminate in what kind of feeling you experience. So if you are a negative person who's highly reactive and dislikes many kinds of contacts, some babies like that, like if you touch the baby, then they're easily irritated. And then other babies, like if you touch them, they like it. So this is like the way the nervous system is built on a different individual. And then if somebody is irritable, and then they proliferate themselves into a lot of whining and negative opinions and negative views. If they have a negative belief that everybody is out to get me, or life is hellish and life is terrible, and all of those kind of views can also contribute to having a situation where the contact is very likely. You've got the underlying tendency to aversion, and then the contact is likely to arise to an unpleasant feeling. And the same thing with somebody with an underlying tendency to greed. It has a tendency to arise to a pleasant feeling. So then with cultivation and insight and wisdom, those underlying tendencies will be diminished and finally dissolved completely. And then still there are feelings that are much more simple and not so psychological, like a physical feeling, like the aurora borealis. So it's pleasant, but you're not like getting all excited about it and wanting to take a selfie of yourself with the aurora borealis behind you and then put it on your Facebook page so everybody can say, I saw the aurora borealis. That would be an unskillful, self-centered reaction to having a pleasant experience with nature. So you can decondition yourself to have less overwhelming feelings. And then furthermore, when the feeling does arise, whether it's weak or strong, you can train the mind not to proliferate, not to identify, and not to have additional new greed and aversion and delusion arising based on these feelings. So it's both a cycle. So the feeling is the result of things that happened before. By the time a feeling arises, you can't actually do that much about it, except you can avoid proliferating on that feeling. You can see the feeling accurately how it is. But you can reduce the conditions for similar strong feelings to arise and overwhelm you in the future by developing wisdom, so that those underlying tendencies are diminished, weakened, and ultimately removed. If when you experience something beautiful like that aurora borealis, if you engage in relishing it, delighting it, welcoming it, and appropriating it, that would set the conditions for unwholesome proliferation. But if you just leave it alone, then you don't have that unwholesome proliferation. Here's a question, Ryan. Is sati sampajanya what we must maintain at all times regarding the situation? Yeah. Sati sampajanya is also especially useful as you go through the day when you're forming your intentions and deciding to do things. So being aware of the karma that you're about to create when you make a decision to do something or when you form an intention. I say that because Sampajanya has, in the commentary, they develop it in a way of like reviewing the thing that you would like to do to see whether it's wholesome and beneficial and timely. And but mindfulness and clear comprehension, absolutely. If that can be sustained throughout the day, then you have a lot of protection from going the wrong way with Vedana. And if, because of causes and conditions, in the state of your training, how far along you are in the path, if you are regularly overwhelmed by strong feelings, then Sati Sampajanya can help you to gradually tame those feelings and make them less overwhelming, and don't pick up those feelings in a way that's going to make more trouble. So that's, I think, enough. So thank you for your patient listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.